Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this evening for this important dialogue and conversation. I am your moderator for the evening, Dr. Greg Shirley. I serve as the Associate Director for Employee Relations, Technology, and Operations in the Texas Women's University Career Connection Center. And so this is going to be a very insightful and engaging conversation. We're going to come at it from a perspective of professionalism and intelligence, even though it is a very hot topic in both communities. And so I'm going to allow our panelists to introduce themselves as well. So I will popcorn it and I will pick on you at random. So everybody be ready at all times. So let us go ahead and start with Desiree.
Thank you, Greg. Hi, everyone. My name is Desiree Esquivel. I am a member of the Multicultural Greek Council, as well as Sigma Lambda Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Thank you to all the ladies from Alpha Kappa Alpha who are here coordinating this event with us, as well as yourself, Greg. And thank you to everyone who's here to listen in. Yeah.
Oliver.
Hi, my name is Oliver. I am representing Phi Eta Alpha, and thank you for everyone who made this event possible.
Let's go with Chanel.
Hello, everybody. My president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, and I'm also the president of Black Student Association. Us and look forward to this event.
Let's go next to Jocelyn.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Rodriguez. I am a member of Sigma Lambda Gamma National Sorority Incorporated. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for letting us take a part of this event. It's something that needs to be talked about. It's something very important, so let's go.
Brittany.
Hi, my name is Brittany. I'm just here.
Okay, well, welcome, Brittany. Welcome.
I believe that was all our panelists, and then everybody else are just guests.
All right, cool. That's all right. So it's a pilot. That's cool. So let's jump right into the questions. And so the first question, and let's give this to, what exactly does it mean anti-Black, in your opinion?
I believe that it is really just going against people who are from African ethnicity or background. And I also feel like it is just going against not just them, but also like in general people of color.
Chanel, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I feel like it's really just suppressing or being demeaning towards anything related to Blackness. It could be success, it could be a group as a whole, but just being very derogatory. Like even if, let's say, for example, if Rihanna won a Grammy or something, and then everybody else just being like, what about everybody else? But we are celebrating Rihanna because that is the topic of discussion. So I feel like that is what anti-Blackness is.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add before I add my little 2 cents and my insight? Because I want to make sure that the panelists have an opportunity to speak first. Because like I said, I'm just the moderator. I'm just here.
Yeah, like anti-Blackness, and it's to be racist, but the way that I feel like it's manifesting features of Blackness, like AAVE, culture, things like that, without acknowledging the humanity of Black people. So it's wanting to be Black without being Black, and I feel like that's how it manifests with, I don't know, we saw Gina Rodriguez singing that one song, saying the N-word. It's being wanting to be a part of that, but not standing up for Black issues and not speaking on Black issues.
Excellent, thank you, Justin. It's almost like they want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues. It's like the saying goes. And so it's very interesting that, you know, you bring up an excellent point, Jocelyn, and that's something that I wanted to resonate about. You know, they engage in the culture and they want all of the positives, but not so much of the negatives. And so I belong to an African American fraternity. I'm a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, the oldest historically Black intercollegiate fraternity for college educated men. And we have a saying in Alpha: you want, so you see the glitz and the glamour that is the finished product or is put out there, but you don't see the Black that has been put into the work of getting to that point. And there's an amazing poem on YouTube. I cannot remember the poets that said it, and it's called Hide Your Shea Butter. So if you ever are on YouTube and you want to look up Hide Your Shea Butter, it is an excellent poem that speaks to exactly this question. And so it's amazing to me when anti-Blackness exists, when from an anthropological perspective, we all come from a common ancestor in Africa, and race and ethnicity are social constructs, just like sexual orientation, gender, etc. And so what really inspired me to want to be a part with colleagues that identify as, you know, Latinx, Hispanic, Mexican, etc., and they discuss with me the anti-Blackness that exists in the culture that they belong to. And it's amazing to me because if we have nothing in common, is that we're all minorities and we all know what it's like to be oppressed, and we all know what it's like to have somebody biased against us based upon things we cannot control. None of us can control the color of our skin. And maybe we'll get to this conversation piece tonight as well, but even talking about the colorism within the Latinx community and how it compares to the African American community and what that issue and that concern is like. But really appreciate those responses. I'm gonna get to the next question that we have. So why is colorism such an issue in the communities? And I will give that to Chanel first.
Okay, so not sure if everybody knows, but I am a after-school teacher. So I always teach my students all the time that whenever you look at someone, you treat them based off of their character. You never ever treat them based off of their color. It does not matter if you're dark, if you're light, if you're blue, if you're purple. And the focus of colorism is on how you look and the color of your skin and not how you are as a person. And that is why colorism is such a problem. And I really think that's just why it exists, because you're kind of taught to think certain ways or do certain things, not because of anybody or what they're doing, but just because of based off of what you look like. And you cannot control the color of your skin. You can only control your character and how you carry yourself.
Sabrina, do you have anything to add?
But can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure, of course. Why do you feel colorism is such an issue in communities? And it can, you know, be in the African American community, it can be in the Latinx community. As I said,
yeah. Honestly, it's really taught on from like our childhood, from experience. Like you know, within the Latinx community, we hear from our parents and our elders to not be in the sun for too long, because of fear of like becoming too dark, as if that's a bad thing, because we need to assimilate and be more white, right? It's this need and desire to be white, and I had to learn that, you know, a long time, understanding that assimilating for them was the way of surviving in this society, right? So I feel like that's where colorism comes into play, and it's this fear, you know, just it's a lot of internalized racism. It's really what it is if that's what we're gonna call it. So yeah.
Excellent. Anybody else have any other insight that they would like to add into that? Yes, Desiree.
So I know I agree with Sabrina a lot that it does have to do a lot with our internalized racism that we have within the Latinx community. And, you know, I think that us as like the newer generation, I think that we are becoming more aware of it. We are beginning to realize and to confront it. And so, you know, I don't want to say that it's not necessarily us, because that's not true at all. There are some people who have that, I don't want to say like kind of old head mindset, where they do still believe that, you know, you get praised like for looking more light skinned. I know for myself, when I was younger, I played sports a lot. I was always in the sun, and I know something that you know, my family from Mexico, they would come and they would always like say, like, well, they would say it in Spanish, but I'm just gonna say it in English so everybody can understand. But they would always say like, you know, they would ask my dad, why do you have a daughter who looks more black, and why do you have a daughter who looks more white? Not more black like in the sense of like actually like they're just darker. And it was something that I never really understood as a child, but now looking back, like that is something that I could have easily confronted. You know, we are all beautiful no matter what the color of our skin is. Black culture is beautiful. Personally, you know, mad props to everything that you guys go through. There by no means do I think that anything going on is okay. It's not. But I do think that the first step in us moving forward is by us actually confronting those in our own families and change. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're probably not going to like it because it's something that you were kind of raised with, but this is the change that we need to make in order to move forward as a society and as humanity. Yeah.
Anybody else? One more comment, one more piece of input from anybody. Because I always find it very interesting that, once again, the colorism exists in both of our communities, yet it's so polarizing. Because I can remember having one of my coworkers, she's Hispanic, but she has indigenous blood in her as well. And, you know, her features aren't celebrated and praised in the larger Latinx community because she has such prominent features that are indigenous, and that hurts her. You know, we've had that conversation, but then she's had family members that have said, well, it could be worse. At least you're not Black. And I'm like, whoa, like, let's curate the space for that for a minute. But then also, you know, in the African American community, we have those same conversations. You know, I have older people in my generation that every time they're talking about somebody Hispanic, they're like, yeah, this Mexican dude. I'm like, can you say the person's name? Well, he is Mexican. I'm like, that's not the point. That's not the point. Can you not put it to be just about their race or ethnicity? So there's a lot of education that needs to go on both ends. Now, the next question is actually going to be very interesting. And I'm not even going to pick on somebody specifically, but I definitely want you all to jump in. Remember, it's a safe space, and I want to know this answer myself. Why are members of the Latinx community so okay with using the N-word? And a hush fell over the crowd.
Oh, sorry. Honestly, I feel like I'm not gonna include myself. Latinx people like to play oppression Olympics. They like to play oppression Olympics, and that's just honest truth. So I feel like I've heard it before. It's like, well, I'm also picked on by white people too, or I'm also the blah 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 by white people too. So there's a pass to that word, and there's no such thing as a pass. I know. I saw a video recently about Ta-Nehisi. I believe I'm saying his name right. Ta-Nehisi? Yes. And he explained it in a way that's like, with me and my friends, we call each other the B word, right? I'm not gonna say it because like we're on a school panel. Those are fighting words. Like, that's offensive. So within the community, if someone, like, it's automatically racist. If you're not Black and you say it, it's automatically racist, and it should not belong in your vocabulary. And if it slips, it's because it's in your vocabulary. So that's what I gotta say about it.
I mean, I can understand because, I mean, I'm gay and we drop the F-bomb and the punk bomb and the sissy bomb to each other all the time. But let somebody else call me that, look, we about to square up. You got beef, let's bring it to the cookout and fry it. So I can definitely understand where you're coming from with that, Jocelyn. I mean, well, I will. Oh, go ahead. Somebody else has something else to say, please.
I was just gonna say, I've heard a lot of African Americans like tell me that they use the N-word because it helps them form like a community and helps them. They use it as a community word, like for them, and then it's kind of piggyback on minorities in general are often oppressed, and that I feel like LatinX they feel more comfortable using it because they also fit into that, so they fit into that community aspect.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. So, I mean, I guess the question that I have is, outside, and you don't have to use the words, but I've always been curious about this, so I'm learning as much as I am moderating. Because we use the N-word as a term of endearment with the A on the end and not the hard ER, because there is a difference. For you all in the Latinx community, do you have a word that's equivalent to that you all use that is only exclusive to the Latinx community? Like Jocelyn, you said the B word for women, and your friend, well, your friend group, we also use it in the gay community too. But like, do you all have that word, or is the N-word that word for you?
Yeah, I honestly feel like a lot of people, since I am from a Latin background and I do come from a low income area, I've heard like so many people use that word so confidently, and like nothing is happening. They use it randomly and like just anything that they do or any little thing. And I feel like since there isn't I guess there isn't a word that we do use, or they use, or in general that we use, they use that word. I also know that a lot of people use the excuse of saying that it is something that they're accustomed to because that's where, from where they're from, that's a word that they use. And I know that that's like kind of wrong, because regardless of the fact that isn't your word, because you don't represent that basically. And I mean, it is like a negative word that I don't like hearing or hate like just being around.
I agree, Oliver. I just want to like, cause like I grew up in Dallas. I'm from Dallas, and I moved around a lot. In Dallas, I lived in Oak Cliff. I went to school in Pleasant Grove. So naturally, I've always been like, I've always been around like low income. Like it's always just Latinx and African American people that I went to school with, right? And it wasn't until Denton that I came across white people. Like it was a huge culture shock for me, because I had never been around white people before. And even then, like with that background, like I've never felt like it was like okay for me to use that word. Like I never felt comfortable using that word. And for me, like it always confused me when I saw other members of the Latinx community using that word, right? Like why does it make it okay, right? Like I don't get the excuse of like, just because I came from that background, because like I went to Skyline, so I'm just like, that doesn't make it okay. Like I don't, and that to me, it doesn't click for me, if that makes sense, right? But I'm also like question like why, within the Black community, like why is it, how do you correct someone in the appropriate way? Like how can we correct like our own people, right? What are ways to do that? And also, yeah, that's just really my question, I guess. Can I ask you a question?
Oh, of course. Chanel, do you wanna handle that first?
Yes. So with the first question being why people feel comfortable using the word, or let's say the Latinx community, is because we are all minorities, but we all come through different struggles. Each minority group, like regardless of even Asian minorities, we are all minorities as a whole, but we didn't go through the same things, you know, which we are united as minorities, but we each have different sectors which make us different. So the N-word itself came from slavery, which is why, okay, we're like, let's revamp the word among us, because it was meant to demean us and bring us down, but we're going to bring it to a place where this means friend, or this means homie, or this means whatever. But if you did not go through slavery, or, you know, let's say your descendants or your ancestors didn't even come from Africa, or they didn't have to be brought on boats, or they didn't have to struggle, or they didn't have to pick cotton, then why are you using this word? Because it doesn't relate to you. So as to telling people, you know, why you shouldn't use the word is because you didn't go through those struggles that pertain to where the word came from. It's not your roots. The same way how, like I said, I am an after school teacher, and I do teach my students to respect like Hispanic heritage. Example, for Thanksgiving, instead of making Native American hats, we chose to make turkey hats so that we would not be assimilating culture, just out of respect. So just teaching respect and just educating, because people can't know unless you educate them.
And I think definitely, Sabrina, to answer your question, having that courageous conversation, first letting them know that it is cultural appropriation. And so no one wants to be a culture vulture. And so being that culture vulture, that's like if Chanel and I celebrated Cinco de Mayo in a very egregious way, or a very egregious manner, and walked around in ponchos and sombreros, which mortifies me. But also being able to give them the rationale of, from a cultural perspective, you don't have a cultural tie to that word. The fact that all of us have gone through things, particularly in the last 4 years. However, that word, much like the B word, much like the F word, that the LGBTQ community throws around, I mean, there's something to be said about that belongingness. And it's gonna be a challenge, Sabrina, I'm not gonna lie. There are gonna be people that are gonna fight you tooth and nail to say, well, you know what? My Black friend said that I can say it. My Black friend said that I can use it. That doesn't make it right, you know, at the end of the day. And
Right.
so also, if you ever address somebody and they have an issue with you saying that to them, maybe have, if you do have this in your space, an African-American friend that can bring it home to them a lot more effectively. Because sometimes it takes somebody who is within that culture to explain to them why that is offensive and why that is. He would always refer to women as females. And I'm like, no, you should call them women. Female is like very, it's not the appropriate way to describe a woman. She's a woman, not a female. A dog can be a female. A horse can be a female, but a woman is a woman. And so he didn't understand that, because growing up in Southeast Louisiana, that's all he heard, you know, in music and in things like that. And so also, you know, much to the defense of individuals who are not Black that use the N-word, it's woven into every single piece of music you hear at the club and on the radio. And it's almost like you can't help it. And you almost have to be actively repressing saying it. And so that can be challenging as well. However, having the courage to have that conversation initially, I think, is the first step. And then if you're ever unsure about the verbiage to utilize, then that's when you ask somebody within the community.
I agree. Thank you so much for answering that. For me personally, I don't care about making people comfortable. Like, I don't care about calling people out. Yeah, but yes, thank you for answering.
Okay, well, you're welcome. You're welcome. So, you know, and full disclosure, Sabrina and I, we had a real good long conversation last week. And so I'm going to pull from this conversation that we had last week on something. So I apologize ahead of time, because this next question, it kind of goes into, Sabrina, what you and I were talking about from, you know, individuals with a Cuban background, Puerto Rican background, Guatemalan background, etc., who, you know, voted a certain way in the election. I'm not gonna say what way, because this is a safe space, but people who are grinning and nodding their heads, they know what I'm talking about. Can someone explain the issues with the All Lives Matter counter protest? So whenever you hear African Americans or other people saying Black Lives Matter, and they're like, well, no, all lives matter. Yes, Desiree, go ahead, jump in.
So sorry about that. So I think a lot of it has to do with like, I forgot who said it earlier. Sorry about that. But where they said that we like to make our difficulties and our struggles and our things that we've gone through equal to Black lives and like those in the Black community and what they have to deal with. And it's sad that there are people who do personally believe that the things that we went through, that our ancestors went through, are anywhere equivalent to slavery or anything like that. That's a lot of what it has to do with, and I think a lot of it has to do with the colorism within the Latinx community, where, you know, we often praise those who are lighter skinned. We praise those who, you know, appear to be more white than Latinx or more Black or anything like that. And I think that's a lot of what it has to do with whenever, you know, you have those people who think that all lives matter is an equal movement to Black Lives Matter, or, you know, they try to make it seem like all lives matter is a movement that's something that should be higher up or superior than Black Lives Matter movement.
Thank you for that. Does anybody else have anything else they'd like to add? Okay.
I do have something I would like to add.
Sure.
So I do feel as if All Lives Matter is more of like a mimic. So let's say like with the show, for example, like Girlfriends, and then the game is a spinoff of Girlfriends. The original idea, the game is a cool show, but the original idea came from that. So unless you had the idea on your own, cool, kudos to you, but, you know, it came off of a mimic or a mockery, and it's just like as if it's Valentine's Day, we're focusing on Valentine's Day. Other holidays are important, but we're not going to say all holidays matter, because that is not the focus of what we're talking about. We're talking about Valentine's Day, focusing on love and support and all that, and not Christmas.
We got 100 sheep and 99 are okay, but there's one in danger, and the other 99 are like, well, what about us? Y'all are fine. Don't worry about this sheep over here. Y'all are okay. Which follows up to the next question that we have, which, you know, for the audience members, we were bouncing this question around, y'all. We were gonna ask a question. We gonna take it there. So we gonna be like Jada and do the red table talk. And Gloria and Stefan and do the red table. We bring it to the red table like it's Jordan Wood. So we gonna make it happen. Ain't no entanglements in here though. Why don't Black Lives Matter protests also address Black on Black crime? That's something that we need to address. I have my own thoughts on that. However, I would like the panelists and anybody, even in the audience, to chime in on that. So let's hear from panelists first who have something to say about that. But then let's also hear from members of the audience in case they have something to say. And then I'll chime in, but I'll also go ahead and put it in this nice little chat box. So anybody want to take the lead on that first? Okay, Chanel, come on, you up.
Okay, so Black on Black crime is spoken about. It is something that is addressed, but the main focus, like we said before, there's a time for everything, and the main focus would be what is going on with police brutality, and not just in America, but everywhere. It's just like a ball that just keeps forming and forming and forming. And at the end of the day, it's like there being 4 leading causes of death, or just causes of death in general, but you would focus on the first maybe 1 to 2, maybe even the third, but the fourth one is there, but that's not the main focus of the conversation or of the area. And because of where we're limited or placed, I don't know if y'all ever seen this video. It's a video of some lizards, and it's only a little bit of food that the lizards have. So the lizards are fighting each other. They're perfectly fine before the food was set in front of them, but because there's limited food, they started to fight each other. And because of the way that things Black community has to go against each other for supplies or just to make it by, but the main focus is police brutality and why you feel the need to kill people because of their skin color and not Black on Black crime, which can be addressed once we focus on institutionalized racism. And once we fix those areas, then you will see those numbers go down. But first, the main focus is figuring out how we can stop police brutality or at least minimize it. So that's my spiel.
Yeah, like we talk about Black Lives Matter focuses on police reform and police brutality. And I feel like the term Black on Black crime is used by people in their whataboutism arguments. It's like, oh, this police officer murdered a Black man. And then it's kind of used, well, what about this? And then, well, what about they do it to each other? So they use it to justify. And that's why sometimes I believe that Black on Black doesn't really exist, because if we see white people are always seen as individuals and the Black community is always seen as a collective. So when we talk about Black on Black crime, I feel like you just see Black people as a collective and everything that happens with that community is for everyone. But when a white person commits a crime, it's just that one person. So, yeah.
Real talk, real talk, real talk. Real spit. Anybody from the audience have anything that you would like to add with that?
Yeah, I actually would like to go. So hi everyone, my name is Jordan. I recently, a couple of weeks ago, there was this club in Dallas, ALD. My cousins were actually the guys who were shot and killed. So to speak on Black crime, we were at the detective's office, and this is something me and my mom talked about after we got home. And with the Black on Black crime situation, we overheard an officer say, well, if they do it to each other, and I'm gonna basically refer back to it's Jocelyn. Refer back. Oh, okay, sorry. So we're like referring back to how she's talking about the whataboutism. Yeah, they were like, we overheard them, and this was crazy that I actually heard somebody say that. They were like, oh, well, if they do it to each other, then what's the problem with us doing it to them? And I was just like, did they seriously just say that? So it's like, address what's going on in our community before like other people get to chime in and say, oh, well, they do this, they do that, they can do this to each other, so what's the problem with us doing it or us saying it? So I just feel like we got to address what's going on inside before like we go to the outside.
I mean, I definitely agree. You got to take care of home first. And so we were talking about this for everybody that's listening. Chanel touched a little bit on it as well. Black on Black crime would not exist if it were not for the institutionalized racism, the redlining, the voter suppression, et cetera, that white America put us in. And the same thing can be said for our Latinx brothers and sisters. Whether it's a ghetto for Black people, a ghetto for the Asian community, a ghetto for the Latinx community, the thing that resonates the most with me, and I was reading an article about this because we do diversity, equity, and inclusion training within the Career Connection Center. And there's an article that I read, and it mentioned that institutions of power all came together and intellectually agreed that it was in their best interests to suppress African Americans. That's the police, the school districts, local governments, housing agencies, banks, all these white men, let's just call a thing, came together and said, you know what, we're gonna do this. So we're gonna purposely put you in lower income housing. We're gonna effectively make your schools subpar. We're going to box you into this. So we took you from your country, made you forget your culture, your language, your history, made you assimilate. But now that you have assimilated, oh, well, no, that's not enough because we just don't want you here. Well, you shouldn't have brought us here in the first place. And so that's why with me, when people talk about Black on Black crime, when white people talk about Black on Black crime, you're the reasons that we're doing this. Just like when we were talking about the protesting and things earlier, and people were saying, well, you know, why is it that people who are behind Black Lives Matter protest so much? And we could go into the whole discussion of how many individuals are put into Black Lives Matter protests as actors to incite the violence and make the Black Lives Matter protests look bad, but we're not going to go there. That's a different conversation for a different day. But it's like a young sister said, we learned that from you. Boston Tea Party, Civil War, we learned violence gets results. And so now you're mad that we're using the tactics. We've peacefully protest. We've done things from a legal standpoint. We've done things from a, meeting of the mind standpoint. You didn't listen to that. So now you're going to get what you're going to get. And they're concerned about that. So not to say that that necessarily has anything to do with Black on Black crime. However, going back to that, I will say definitely, they're worrying about the wrong thing, but much to your point, Jordan, we need to start within. We need to start internally. So yes, anybody else have anything else to add to that? I mean, we got 20 minutes. I want to make sure we get everybody. Somebody's mic is off. I'm hearing somebody. Alexis, it says you're talking. Oh, well, maybe Alexis isn't talking. Okay, well, next question. And I think we've kind of already touched on this, but we can still go ahead and circle back a little bit. Why is there such a divide in the Latinx and minority community? I'll pick on somebody if somebody doesn't say anything. Oliver, I'm gonna pick on you.
Okay. Do you mean like, is the question kind of like asking like divide between the Latinx and every other minority?
Let's look at it right now from just the divide between the Latinx community and the African American.
Okay. Well, essentially from, to be honest, that see themselves greater in their aspect of being better than Black people, meaning because all of the stereotypes that they've heard, seen, even coming from like back in their home country, all of the things that they've heard and stuff like that. I know that they put themselves in a self-ideology of them being greater than them, because essentially of all the stereotypes of hearing all the negativity that Black people supposedly do, like all of the crimes that supposedly happen, mostly based on them. But it's also like, you can't base off your point of view on just stereotypes that you've heard, like, yeah, I kind of need to think about that one.
Sabrina has a response to it as well.
Yeah, okay, so honestly, for me, like the Latinx community to me can be really embarrassing, just with why we're here today, right? How anti-Black we can be in the history of the anti-Blackness within the community, right? And when sometimes it's difficult for me to say, yeah, I'm a Latina, right? But like saying that, I also have to face like the ugliness that comes with that, right? And when I say that, I mean like the murder, the genocide, the rape, whitewashing, anti-Blackness, and the anti-Indigenous at the core of its very being, right? And so those are the things that come to me, and when I say, like, when we're talking about the divide within the Latinx community, and to go further, like, it makes me think about how we don't even claim like our Black Latinas, Afro Latinas within our own community. And so that to me, like, it's just really disgusting to me, because I'm just like, we're part of the problem, right? And you know, that's why, like, it's so important for us to have these conversations, for us to like challenge, you know, within our intimate relationships with our family members, our friends, or, you know, be in community with each other and discuss, like, why is that? Why are we like that, right? So yeah, that's kind of like, I guess that answered the question. So
and something to kind of piggyback on that. I mean, you all as young adults, you all growing up in society and seeing the things that are happening on television, to George Floyd and Tatiana Jefferson and Breonna Taylor and things like that. How do you navigate having those conversations with your older generations of parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles to let them know that this is egregious and this isn't right? Because even then, for me, it's not even a Black issue, it's not a Latinx issue, it's a human issue. Like, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And so, you know, with my father, he has very staunch beliefs in his 70s of Mexicans. And I'm like, Daddy, that's just not right, you know? And so for me, it's a challenge. And I'm 39 years old. So I want to know, for you all who are in your 20s, well, I'm assuming that y'all in y'all 20s. Good Black and good Latinx don't crack if you drink water and mind your business and not be a racist. But, you know, how do you all have that conversation? I mean, Thanksgiving is coming up. So, you know, the first question I'm gonna ask is who you vote for. That's gonna clear the room. So anybody feel free to jump in with that.
I just want to say, like, real quick, the conversation of Thanksgiving, yeah, I literally asked my cousins that, because there are there's a bunch of people in our own family that kind of like think like that. And also with the presidential election and everything going on, I already asked, I was like, hey, how do you think this is going to go on? And we're like, we don't even want to speak about it, because we're going to be in this corner while they argue about it. But going back to the question of kind of like how we address it, what I kind of do is, starting off with my mom. My mom is like one of the open ones, and one of the ones that actually like notices things. And she's more wise, not like old wise, like with the negativity and stuff, but like she also like sees past how all of the like negative things our family sees in the Black community, for example. But I like, when we ever do talk about any like situations going on in the world right now, and if like she brings up a view that maybe you should always see past that. You should like never like put that into consideration of how people are, and you should also never like base off, again, your views on people like that. Like, you just gotta know the person personally. And I think it's just like a thing of humanity, that you should be nice to people. And like, it just honestly sucks hearing that even in my own family, because it's like it's just such negativity going on in the world already, and you're just like suppressing it more, and you're making it worse. I just want to also say real quickly, I was like getting a haircut, and you know, it's in a Mexican salon place, and I was just like casually sitting there getting my haircut, and then I noticed on the TV that a Trump advertisement came on for Latinos for Trump, basically. And I was just sitting there, and I was like, is this really going on? Am I really seeing this? Like, honestly, like, it's disgusting. And it's also like more disgusting hearing how like more Latin people are like being open about being Trump supporters, honestly.
I mean, from what I learned, socialism, especially in Cuba and, you know, in other South and Central American countries, is dictated Latins for Trump because they're afraid Joe Biden is going to bring back socialism, and they remember socialism and all of that stuff. And it's like, no, that's not the case. You know, and it's funny, and Oliver, a lot of what you mentioned resonated with me because there's a saying that, you know, white people, well, no, we as Black people, we see our white friends, or I see all of my Hispanic and Latinx friends in every white and Latinx person that I see. But white and Latinx people see me as the exception. And so that's deep, that once again, I have friends that are white, that are Latinx, and every Latinx and white person I see, like, I'm like, oh, that reminds me of Brianna, or oh, that reminds me of Vietnam, or oh, that reminds me of Jakin, or, you know, I see those things, but then they see me as, you know, you're so articulate, and you're a doctor, and you're this, and it's almost condescending to a point, which is concerning. But does anybody else have any other comments on that? Yes, Desiree.
So I know the original question was kind of like, how do you go about addressing those who are more like open about, you know, like being, I don't want to say being racist, but who they voted for, especially around this time. So with my family, we didn't waste any time. Literally right after you came back from the polls, like hey, who did you vote for? And I even had members of my own family who did not vote. Because they felt like they didn't like either of the candidates, or that I honestly don't know why. It's very hard for me to accept, especially because some of those family members are very, I hold them very dear to my heart. But you know, I think that with them, a lot of times I feel like overall, with me, I'm kind of like a very straight to the point type of person when it comes to those type of things. And my dad is too. So it's hard to say how we particularly go about it, because whenever you really strongly believe in something, it's not easy to hold back and to make others feel comfortable. If anything, I feel like it's important to make them feel a little uncomfortable, especially because, you know, sometimes people are really stubborn. They really don't like to open their mind. And I feel like a lot of times your mind is like a parachute, and it only works if you open it. And so for me, I know for me and my dad, we're very confrontational towards the person who, you know, is very open about their ideas and their opinions as far as the Black community and stuff. But I think that, you know, and I'm just gonna go ahead and be open about this and tell you a little story time. So it's funny that you bring up socialism, because the member of my family who actually voted for Trump 4 years ago and now didn't know who she wanted to vote for, that is her biggest thing now, with Biden being, or, you know, with Biden primarily being the person who's going to win the election. She's very big on, you know, I don't understand why you would vote for him, things like that. And it's like, no, we're not. But you have to open your mind to other things, that things are changing. We are not in the same place that we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. Things are changing. People are changing. Views are changing. And it's important that you learn to open your mind. And okay, you don't have to agree with them. That's fine. It's okay to disagree. We're human. It's okay to not agree with every person's opinion that you come across, but it's important to respect those opinions and respect those people as humans, regardless of their opinions. So, like I said, we're just very straight to the point.
And I feel like for a lot of, particularly my friends who, and thank you, Desiree, for sharing that, a lot of my friends who are a part of the Latinx and Hispanic community, they've mentioned that same thing. You know, they've mentioned, they're very one, so it's either socialism, abortion, same-sex marriage, it's border control, it's, you know, and even then, that's a whole different conversation, because I look at the individuals who are Latinos for Trump that are pro-border control, and I'm like, but wait, make it make sense. But then again, if they don't have to, if they're in Florida and they're in New York and they're in the Midwest, they don't have to be concerned about what's happening on the border of Texas and the southwestern states and stuff like that. So, you know, I hear a lot of this from my Hispanic friends, which just gives me assurance that, you know, we're not the only ones dealing with internal issues in our own race and our own ethnicity. Everybody's got something. Well, we've got about 7 minutes left, and how can non-Black members of MGC organizations be more supportive and inclusive of the Black community on campus? So I will let anybody that is African American answer this question. Chanel, since you're a panelist, I'm gonna start with you though, so I'm gonna pick on you. So yeah, how can MGC be more inclusive and help us? Oh yeah.
I would say in order for y'all to help us, we should also concern like helping you, like a give type of situation. I'm a type of person, it doesn't even matter if you give to me or not, I will support you. So if y'all invite us to things, we will always come, we will show up, or I will personally speak on Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, that we will come, we will show up to anything you want us to show up to. And in return, making the same gestures. So when it's at school, or even everything starts back at home, when you're at home, like breaking these things down. And my parents are Cameroonian, so they're African, and I am African American. I was born here, but I'm of African descent. And I always make sure to correct my parents. Like, they love everybody, but sometimes they make little mishaps. I'm like, bro, why are you saying that? Like, just making sure you educate your people, like being like, it's not just being like, oh, those Mexicans or those Asians, or it's not about color, about saying someone's name, or just about making sure you're rerouting everyone. So that's the way to help us, and we will also help you as well, but making sure that we're starting the gesture from home and making sure that we're teaching and not being afraid, because a lot of times we're just afraid to say something. And I know I'm a confrontational person, not necessarily in a negative way, but making sure, like, if I have something to say, I'm going to say it. And it might be your mom or your dad, or sometimes it's seen as disrespectful, but if it's seen in that manner, just watching how you say it so that it can come correctly and so that it can be internalized to where they receive it. So that's all I have to say.
You know what? I never did real estate, but I'll put you in your place if need be. Need be. And the fact that your parents are from Cameroon, Chanel, I know that from an African to an African American perspective, that's a whole different conversation. Because Africans and African American, woo, so much richness, so much richness. Before I say anything, does anybody else have anything else that they want to add?
Yes, I would like to go. To keep it short and simple, I would just say education, and then like what was the word I'm looking for? I lost it, but pretty much educating and like knowing when to correct someone and give opinions of the minority.
Okay, cool. I would just say, honestly, what you're doing now. So the fact that you made the space for us to come together, personally, I appreciate that. Because, you know, we have a lot, as cliche as this is going to sound, we have a lot more in common than we have that makes us different. And so I definitely appreciate that. Yes, Jocelyn.
Okay, just to add on, I feel like internally within our organizations, we need to remember that if we wouldn't exist if D9 didn't exist. So we're here because D9 created that space, and letting and educating our new members on, because a lot of us stroll, most of us stroll. Where does strolling come from? Where does the call come from? Do we step? What's branding? Things like this that we need to educate ourselves internally, and having zero tolerance policy with our members. Like, if you slip up and you say something derogatory, if you say something racist, why are you wearing my letters? It's like, and if you don't like, making those stances online, making it known so the people that are interested in your organization know where your organization stands. Because if you're not approach my organization.
Clear it. Clear the room. Clear the room. Give me the room. Okay. Well, you know what, Jocelyn? You know what? You about to make me turn on duck if you butt, girl. But I want to, on behalf of, well, I can't say on behalf because I'm just here as the moderator. I really want to thank you all for giving us this hour. It went by so quickly, so quickly. MGC, y'all should do this again. Y'all really should. This would be a great event for Black History Month.
Hey, I won't be here, but we can pass the word along. I mean, MGC Council is still going to be here, so yes.
Oh, you're graduating?
I'm just taking a break.
Okay, you know, that's fine. That's fine. You know what? Do what you gotta do. Do what you gotta do. I'll still be cock looking crazy. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I wanted to say like one more thing. Like another thing is that all of us have access, you know, have a lot of privilege too. Like we need to recognize like our privilege and that we have a lot of access to a lot of things that not other people get to have. And a lot of that starts with decolonizing our mind and really just admitting to ourselves that we have a colonized perspective, right? And if we want to free ourselves, we need to free our minds first. That starts with our minds. So reading and Google is free, y'all. So I always tell that to people. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us.
Yeah. Dr. Thank you so much for having, and thanks for the panelists and for whoever made this possible. Yeah, we would love to have this again next semester. And yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.